Hello, YouTubers, and welcome to another episode on Go Figure Customs YouTube channel. Today is episode 4 of how to make your own custom card backs. This is the episode that you didn't know you needed to have. And why is that? I mean, if you've watched the other 4 videos, this might actually be the 5th video, because I think I did one video about introduction to making your own cards. But this is the video you didn't know that you needed to have, because what I'm going to talk about today is troubleshooting some of the production all along the way. So one of the first things I'm going to show you, I've printed up a bunch of my cards, got a bunch of cards printed and trimmed down, and figures glued on them. So I'm going to show you some of those, the ones that looked nice, and I'm going to show you some of the ones that didn't come out. And we're going to talk about how to avoid some of these pitfalls. I'd like to first give out a big shout out to David Lozio. Hopefully I'm saying his name right. He's the artist that did the artwork for the Day of the Dead artwork, and that's what I used for my card art on my skeleton western figures. I named the line of figures Day of the Dead after his artwork as well. He found me on Facebook this morning and commented on one of my figures and really liked it, which brings me to one real quick point that I wanted to mention. If you're making cards and you're not using your own artwork, be sure and credit the artist whose art that you are using. The internet is not as big as you might think, and people will see this stuff. If you post it, people will find it, and if you don't credit people when you use their stuff, people tend to get pissed. I found one of my pictures, one of my customs on a Indonesian customizing page a couple of days ago. Somebody had removed all of my watermarks from my photo and trimmed it down so that you couldn't see my logo anymore, and didn't give me credit, and they didn't link the photo back to my page even. So it's just this guy posting a picture of one of my customs. He didn't say anything about it, so I don't think that he's claiming that it's his, but people will find their own stuff online. So be sure and give others credit where credit is due. That's just fair for the artists. I'd like to think of myself as an advocate for artists, as a semi-professional photographer, and then as a customizer as well. So one of the things that I would like to do is show you those Day of the Dead cards and the mistakes that I made on those cards. First off, the Rifleman card. I put the logo too close to the top, and then I punched it just to see how that would look with the J-hook punch in there, the peg punch in there. And unfortunately, I think it's too distracting. It right through one whole word. It doesn't work at all. So unfortunately, that's where I had to place the Day of the Dead logo, because anywhere else on the card it would have interfered with more of the art itself. Sometimes I like to put like logos behind the art, so you can only see part of the lettering. I do that a lot on my G.I. Joe stuff, so you know that's a G.I. Joe logo, and it's not a big deal if there's somebody in front of it, because you know what that says. But on this one, I tried that, and just too much of it was gone, and it's too new of a thing that if you just saw a dead over here and a D, you wouldn't know what that was. So it didn't work. So I had to put it up there, but I didn't take into consideration where to put a peg hole. And then I thought about, well, what about offsetting it? Because I specifically, like on G.I. Joe, let me pull one of my G.I. Joe cards up. The G.I. Joe card, the old vintage cards, so I made this card for my Tunnel Rat custom that I've already carded on one of my other cards, but I like the vintage look, the vintage art with my updated figure. You can see that I've offset the peg hole, and this is how it was on the vintage cards originally. It was offset because this is a template that I've used someone else's template to make this particular card. So this is where the peg hole goes. So there was a place for it. Unfortunately, on one of my other cards, the sizing of my font is wrong, and my peg hole goes into a bit of the wording, a bit of the lettering. Not too badly, but it's still noticeable to me, at least. So I tried to offset the peg hole on the second card just to see how it looked, and it doesn't look any better. I think it actually looks worse than having it dead center. So this is why, number one, you want to make sure your graphic art is good before you go to the printer. I don't know why I didn't consider a peg hole in this. I've stopped using a peg hole template, a layer in Photoshop on my cards because I now have an actual punch for it, so I don't put that layer in Photoshop anymore because I'm just going to punch the card anyway. I think I'm going to put that back in. I'm going to put that layer back in just to make sure my layout on my card is good. Now let me show you one where it did work well with the offset, and that was for my Kate Macer figure, and that's, if you're not familiar with her, that was who Emily Blunt played in Sicario. She was the FBI agent. So I offset the peg hole based on where the lettering for the title was, and I think that works just fine. I'm pretty happy with how that turned out. However, another example of what was I thinking, I didn't think this one through all the way, was I made a Lich King custom. I got introduced to what a Lich King is by reading Ready Player One. If you've seen the movie, read the book. The book is wow. So there's a Lich King in Ready Player One. And I couldn't think of an interesting idea to card it, because eventually I would like to have all of my customs on cards. And then I thought, well, where's the Lich King from? Well, it's more of a kind of a fantasy sword and sorcery kind of thing. And I'm like, what's sword and sorcery? What's the first thing I think of when I think of sword and sorcery? The first thing I think of is Dungeons and Dragons. And I thought, what if I made my card art look like one of the books, one of the player manuals from Dungeons and Dragons? So that's what I did. I took a lot of art online, and this card took me quite a while to do the graphic art of getting the layers right. But it does look like one of the player's manuals. I've even got the lettering down here saying what the character is, where the particular name of the quest would be. But I didn't leave myself room for a peg hole anywhere. I could put it above Dungeons and Dragons. See, if I was going to, I put my punch on there and I would have put it right through the top lettering. And I didn't want to do that. I don't know why I didn't think to put. This is what happens when I didn't put my peg hole template on layer in with this to see where it would lay. I just thought, I'll punch it when I'm done. Well, it turns out this isn't gonna work. I can't put a punch hole. I can't punch a hole in this and have it look decent. So I'm not gonna punch this particular card. I've got another idea for that. I'll share that at another time once I work out some other stuff. The other problem I ran into is securing the blisters to the cards. I've been using super glue. I have a love-hate relationship with super glue. I use it in my customs exclusively, but I use it with a super glue accelerator. I don't know how I ever customized without super glue accelerator. Not only does it accelerate the drying time for the super glue, it hardens the super glue. It makes the glue last longer on the figures. A bunch of the customs, my first customs that I made before I used super glue accelerator, some of the stuff's fallen off of those guys. The customs that I've made since I've started using super glue accelerator, no problems with those. However, super glue tends to get everywhere, whether you realize it or not. And I didn't realize it when I was carding some of my figures today. Specifically, one of my Dukes of Hazzard customs. So I got Bo Duke carded. You can see I left myself room for the peg hole at the top. The graphic art, the layout worked just exactly how I wanted it to. It looked exactly like how I thought it would look in my mind. It came out exactly how I wanted it to. I'm really happy with that one. And I gotta say thank you to everybody that has liked my page and commented on these particular customs. My page has exploded because of these customs. I have never had a response in any way, shape, or form as much as I have to my Dukes of Hazzard customs. So number one, thank you to Gigabread Customs for making the heads. I'm glad I was able to get those before he sold out. And thank you to everybody that has liked and commented and shared my pictures. I was pushing 2,000 likes on my page when I got home from Ukraine this last time. I am now pushing 2,100 likes on my page, thanks to everybody. So thank you for everybody that's following me on Facebook. I really do appreciate it. It means a lot to me. However, back to the super glue issue. I had gotten a little bit of super glue on my index finger and didn't realize it when I carded Luke. And you can see the smudge right there. Now I'm thinking some acetone on a cotton ball, and I can probably rub that out. If not, chances are I will just take this apart, and this is why we print why I suggest printing 2 copies of the cards, so you have a backup if something bad happens like this. So I punched those Day of the Dead cards, and you can see I didn't attach a figure to these because it's like, nah, it's fucked up. I'm not going to use these. I can't. It's garbage. I'm just going to throw them away. They're not even good for like proofs because the hole punched in them looks ridiculous. But this, if I can't get this fixed, I have another. I printed a second copy. I'll just make another card, get another blister, and glue it, and it'll be good. Or will I glue it? I don't know. Probably not. One of the customizers that I've seen, and I can't give credit because I don't remember who posted it, and I'm sorry, is using double-sided tape, and I think the flange on the blisters is about 1 millimeter, 2 millimeters wide. So I know that he said he's using double-sided tape that's like 0.5 or 1 millimeters wide. So I'm going to look for some of that. Probably not before I leave, because I'm not going to be carding any more figures before I go. But I'm going to try that next time. So maybe I'll end up doing a review on carding figures using tape instead of glue, because I got glue on this. If that doesn't come off, I'm going to have to use my second card and recard that. I also got glue on my Skeletor figure, unfortunately. It's not as bad, it's not as pronounced, but you can hear it scraping right there. I'm happy with how this one came out. Again, this one I got lucky on. I didn't put the the peg hole template on this card. I just thought, yeah, I'll just punch it when I get it done. And it barely missed the Masters of the Universe logo by... It's like right on the Masters of the Universe logo. 0.5 millimeter lower, and it would be into the logo. So I just barely got this one done. So think about placement of stuff in your graphic art when you're designing your cards, and make sure you've got everything where you want it before you send it off to the printer. Let's see what else that I have that I can. I'm getting another head from Gigabread Customs of Charles Bronson. This is a particular favorite movie of mine that he did. Came out the year before I was born. Actually, it's called The Mechanic. It's with Jan Michael Vincent, who you would remember was in Airwolf. I'm going to do a figure of him from this particular movie. This is the card that I made for that. And again, got lucky. Peg hole just about went into the lettering on the card. I think I showed the Tunnel Rat card already. I did a new card for my Falcon. The lettering, yeah, it didn't quite work there to show that this is supposed to be like a chase variant figure in my line of toys. The smaller card, I don't know why this is smaller. For some reason it's not as big as my other cards, but this is the card that I made for my female Cobra Eel, and you can see that I still have some black that the corner clips didn't get, so I'm going to have to trim that by hand, unfortunately. That will be after I find a blister for this that will work, because these generic blisters, while they are nice for these cards, they aren't perfect if you've got anybody that's got a lot of gear, because I've made this card for Alpine, and Alpine my custom has a lot of gear with him, and he is not going to fit in one of those smaller blisters. So my plan is to find a blister from one of probably the 25th anniversary line that's approximately the same, has a room for gear for approximately the same amount of gear that he has, and then I'll do it from there. And the other figure that I'm working on is Ethan Hunt from Mission Impossible, and you can see my peg hole went into the lettering a little bit. I haven't decided if that's I don't think it's enough for me to go back and redo this card from scratch, because that's what I would have to do, because I don't, once I'm done with my cards, I compress the file, so I can't go back and edit layers. So I would have to redo this card from scratch, and I'm not sure that's worth it for me to do that. So, and the figure for that, I've got the head mostly done. The hands are done. I got a new airbrush, but I'm having problems with that, so I'm waiting for some flow improver. I would like to do an episode on airbrushing, but I know next to nothing useful to relate to an airbrush to help to do any kind of useful video. And then the last ones that I want to show today are the since I showed you the Day of the Dead cards that did not come out. I didn't go back and redo the cards. I just went back and used my backup copy from the ones that I had printed from this morning. So here's the Rifleman. I think that turned out pretty nice. Again, thank you to David for letting me borrow his artwork. As a way to say thank you, when I get back in December, I'm going to be making a figure specifically for him, doing a card using his art, and I'll be sending that to him to say thank you for letting me use his art. And then the Cavalryman, I think that one also came out. His art is fantastic. and it lends itself really well to customs. And his art works fantastic for card art. And as you can see on both of those, I did not attempt to punch holes in those. That's how that's going to be. I'm not sure if I'm going to just like put a thumbtack through it to hang it up on the wall, or maybe I'll put it in a clamshell figure case. I haven't decided, because none of my other the only other carded custom figures that I have in clamshells are the ones that I've had autographed by the actors that have played those characters. You know, maybe if I could get David to autograph these for me, I'd be worth putting them in a clamshell. But aside from that, yeah, I don't know how I'm going to display those yet. If I really want to stick a thumbtack through those or not. You know, nobody else is going to see these. They're just going to hang on a wall in my customizing room for now until the day I die. And then my wife throws them away, or hopefully gives me the nice funeral pyre that I've asked for, where she lays all my toys out in the backyard, puts my dead body on it, and then sends me to Valhalla that way. So that's about it for this particular episode. It's a very short episode. It's just kind of a reminder to think about how your layout is done before you send it to the printer, because once you've got them printed, you're committed unless you want to go back and redo that graphic art. It seems like I've had to go back and redo graphic art on a card or two. I can't remember specifically off the top of my head, but I don't like making cards from scratch that I've already made. I don't mind making new cards. That's half the fun of making them, honestly, is doing the graphic art, at least for me. But to have to go back and redo a card from scratch again is not something that I enjoy doing. So think about your layout while you're doing it. Again, if you're interested in the templates that I use, because like I said, the figure blister, the bubble that he's sitting on, that's what I call is the bubble. So the colored area where the figure sits on the card, I have a template specifically for that. It is sized to a 3 3/4, 4-inch action figure. I also have a larger bubble template for like the Retaliation roadblock size figures. So I have all of this stuff done. You don't have to make the name bubble. I have a template for that. If you're interested in those, let me know. And I can send those to you. I'm also thinking about, I have a Google Drive that's attached to this email that I use for this for YouTube, because I had to get a Gmail address. So I automatically have a G drive. So I'm thinking about putting stuff like that in a G drive and making it available for the public. If you're interested in that, let me know, and I will work on that. The only problem is I have a G drive for my work email, and when I was in the G drive for my customs, I could see stuff for that was in my work G drive, and I can't. There's stuff in there that I can't have out for the public, so I need to make sure. I need to do a little research and make sure that I can set up a public accessible file for these templates that's not going to allow people to see the stuff that I have for work on my work work G drive. And then, of course, the last thing, again, so I was mentioning about troubleshooting your stuff before you send it to the printer, and then after printing. One of the other things, make sure you trim your corners before you glue your figure down. I thought I had this card trimmed, thought I had the corners cut. I didn't. I glued the figure on, then I noticed, shit, I didn't trim my corners. So if you look, you can see the bottom left corner didn't get clipped. I've probably got 3 or 4, maybe even 5 of the custom carded figures that don't have that bottom left corner clipped. It's not such a big deal when you're looking at them all on the wall, but I know that OCD, man, it's like, shit, I feel like an idiot for not clipping that corner. So make sure your corners are clipped before you glue your figure on. And then glue, we're going to look at a new way of doing that. I'm going to look at that double-sided tape because the glue potentially has ruined 2 blisters and 2 cards. Luckily, I've got backup cards, and I can always order more blisters. It's just a pain in the ass to have to do it. So that's all I got for this particular episode. If you have questions, comments about making your own custom cards, please put them below. I'm always happy to help, always happy to answer questions or chat about the process that I use. And if you have requests for future shows, and like, share, subscribe, all those fun social media things. I appreciate all the views. I've noticed that my YouTube has over 80 subscribers so far, which is 79 more than I thought I would get. Okay, no, that's 80 more than I thought I would get because I thought my mom would at least subscribe or my wife, but you know what? Neither one of them have subscribed to my channel. So it's all of you guys, and I appreciate that. And I do like to give back to the community, so I am very open to suggestions for future episodes. Comment below. Thanks for watching.